My name is Helen Margaret Donnelly, and I am 98 years old. I have lived long enough to see the world change its skin many times, but there is one story that has stayed exactly the same inside my heart, a story I have never spoken aloud, not to my children, not to my husband, not to anyone. It begins in the fog. I was 15 years old in 1937, living with my father near the San Francisco docks. He worked nights loading cargo, and I spent most of my hours wandering the piers, listening to sailors tell stories about storms and ghosts and faraway ports. The world felt enormous back then, enormous and cruel. That's when I met him. His name, he said, was Michael. No last name, no introduction, just Michael. He was maybe 17, perhaps 18, skinny but strong, dark hair, hazel eyes that looked older than his face. He worked odd jobs on the docks, hauling crates, mending nets, polishing brass. He spoke very little, but when he did, there was a softness in his voice that pulled me toward him like the tide. In those early days, I didn't ask him where he came from, and he didn't offer to tell. We became inseparable, in the way lonely people do, quickly, quietly, without understanding how dangerous it is to need someone. He would walk me home along the fog-wrapped streets, hands deep in his pockets, humming old folk songs under his breath. At night, I'd lie awake imagining what his past might be, what sorrow lived behind his eyes. One evening, as we sat on the edge of the pier, feet dangling over the water, he whispered, "Helen, if anyone ever asks, you never met me. Promise me." I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. I'm not who people think I am, and if they find me, it won't go well. I should have run, but you don't run from the first person who makes you feel seen. We fell in love the way San Francisco fog rolls in, silently, slowly, until suddenly everything is changed. The winter of 1938 was harsh. The storms came often, rattling windows and flooding streets. Rumors circulated about fugitives hiding in the Port District, about a man wanted by the authorities for stealing military documents. They said he was dangerous. Michael stopped walking me home. He stopped meeting me at the pier. He stopped humming. I knew something was wrong. Then came the earthquake. It struck before dawn on February 11th, a sudden, violent rupture that threw me from my bed. Houses buckled, windows shattered, the ground heaved like something alive. Screams filled the streets, dust choked the air. I ran barefoot toward the docks. The warehouse where Michael worked had collapsed, a giant skeleton of twisted beams and broken concrete. I clawed at the rubble with my bare hands until they bled. I screamed his name until my voice broke. Men pulled me away, telling me no one could survive a collapse like that. They found 3 bodies. None were his. But the city declared him dead anyway. I refused to accept it. For years I searched records, hospitals, churches, shelters. Nothing. My father begged me to stop, to move on, to marry, to forget. I married a kind man at 23. I raised children. I built a life. But a part of me, the part Michael had awakened, stayed frozen in 1938. Then, in 1998, when I was 79, everything changed. I visited a historical archive in San Francisco
to donate some old family letters. As I signed the donation registry, something caught my eye. A signature on the page above mine.
Michael L., 1997. The handwriting was identical. My hands shook uncontrollably. I grabbed the archivist's arm and asked who had signed it. She pointed to a volunteer roster. He worked here 2 years ago, moved away last spring. I asked where. She didn't know. I asked his last name. She hesitated, then whispered. He said he didn't have one. My legs gave way. The archivist helped me sit. My heart felt like it had been torn open by time itself. He lived. Michael lived. He had survived the earthquake, and for 60 years he had stayed hidden. Why? Why didn't he find me? Why didn't he tell me he was alive? I spent months searching, libraries, voter rolls, hospital records. Nothing. He vanished again like fog. Until one morning, 3 years later, in 2001, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a notebook, a worn, weathered brown leather notebook. The first page read, "Helen, if you're reading this, I owe you the truth, all of it." My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped it. He wrote, "I was not hiding from the law. I was hiding from the people who raised me." He told me his real family was involved in things he described only as operations, secret, violent, illegal. He had escaped as a child. They had spent years looking for him, and by the time he met me, he had learned to run faster than memory. During the earthquake, he wasn't trapped. He was cornered. 3 men confronted him inside the warehouse. He fought, he bled, he fled through the collapsing walls. He escaped the city by joining a ship crew. He spent decades drifting, Alaska, Oregon, Washington, always working under different names, always staying out of sight. And then he wrote the line that has lived in my chest ever since. He wrote, "I didn't search for you because I didn't want to destroy everything you built. You deserved a life untouched by the darkness that followed me." I closed the notebook and cried until there were no tears left. Not from anger, not from grief, but from the unbearable truth that love sometimes chooses absence out of devotion. He lived until 1999. He died in a small coastal town under a name that wasn't his. He left instructions to mail the notebook to me after his death. At the end of the notebook, he wrote, "If I could live again, I would stay, even if it killed me." And beneath it, the line I had waited my whole life to hear, "I loved you more than I loved my own life." I sat on my porch that evening and watched the fog roll over the Golden Coast, carrying the last echoes of a boy who lived in shadows to keep me in the light. If I could speak to my younger self, the girl kneeling over rubble screaming his name, I would tell her, "He didn't leave you. He didn't die in the earthquake. He didn't forget you. He sacrificed everything so you could have a life he could never give." That is my story. The story of the man the earthquake buried and the secret he left for me.